Hello everyone. Tonight we step back more than 4 centuries into one of the oldest and most enduring mysteries in American history. A mystery that still echoes across time. It is the story of more than 100 men, women, and children who crossed an ocean to build a new life in a strange and wild land, only to vanish without a trace. This is the haunting mystery of the Lost Colony of Roanoke. The story begins in the late 16th century, when the race for exploration and colonization was fierce. Spain, Portugal, France, and England all sought to carve out empires across the seas. Queen Elizabeth I of England was determined to secure her nation a foothold in the New World, both to rival Spain's dominance and to expand England's reach. Among those most eager to carry out her vision was Sir Walter Raleigh, a favorite of the Queen, who secured a charter to establish a colony in North America. Raleigh never set sail himself, but he organized and funded expeditions, believing that colonies across the Atlantic could be the key to England's future wealth and power. The first attempt at colonization was launched in 1585, when a group of men led by Sir Richard Grenville landed on Roanoke Island, off the coast of present-day North Carolina. The island was chosen for its strategic location, protected yet close to the open sea. The men built a small fort and tried to establish friendly relations with the native peoples. However, tensions quickly grew between the English settlers and the Algonquian tribes, particularly the Secotans and Croatoan. The English, inexperienced in surviving in the harsh environment, depended heavily on the indigenous people for food. Misunderstandings, theft, and violence poisoned the relationship, and the colony soon struggled. When Sir Francis Drake arrived in 1586, after raiding Spanish territories in the Caribbean, many of the weary colonists eagerly accepted passage back to England. Yet Raleigh remained determined, and a second attempt was made in 1587. This time, rather than sending only soldiers and adventurers, the expedition carried families. Over 100 people, men, women, and children, set sail under the leadership of John White, who was appointed governor. Among them was White's own daughter, Eleanor Dare, who would later give birth on the island to a girl named Virginia Dare, the first English child born in the New World. Their arrival marked a shift in tone. This was no longer an outpost for warriors, but the beginnings of what was meant to be a permanent settlement. At first, the colonists tried to repair relations with the native tribes, but mistrust lingered. Croatoan allies occasionally offered assistance, but other tribes remained hostile. The settlers struggled with limited supplies, poor soil, and an unfamiliar climate. John White, recognizing the colony's precarious situation, decided to return to England in 1587 to secure more provisions and support. He reluctantly left behind his family and the colonists with the promise that he would return swiftly. But fate conspired against him. When White reached England, he found the nation gripped by crisis. War with Spain had escalated, and the Spanish Armada threatened England's very survival. Every ship, including those that might have sailed to relieve Roanoke, was seized for defense. White pleaded for resources, but it was not until 1590, 3 long years later, that he finally returned to Roanoke Island. What he found has baffled historians ever since. As his ship anchored off the coast, White scanned the shoreline for familiar signs of the colony. No welcoming smoke rose from chimneys. No settlers came running to greet the long-awaited supply ships. The settlement was eerily silent. When White and his men went ashore, they found the fort deserted. Houses had been dismantled, belongings gone, but there were no bodies, no signs of battle, no graves. Instead, they found 2 strange clues. On a tree near the entrance of the fort, the word Croatoan was carved in large letters. On another post, the letters Crow were etched. White took these as signs that the settlers had moved to Croatoan Island, known today as Hatteras Island, where the Croatoan tribe lived. The colonists had previously discussed such a plan with him. But stormy seas and dwindling supplies prevented White from investigating further. His ship was forced to return to England, leaving the fate of the colonists unresolved. White never saw his family again, and the colonists of Roanoke were never found. From that day forward, the Lost Colony entered the realm of legend. Theories abound about what happened to the settlers. Some believe they tried to sail back to England in makeshift boats and were lost at sea. Others suggest they were massacred by hostile tribes. Yet the absence of human remains casts doubt on those scenarios. Another possibility is assimilation, that the colonists joined the Croatoan or other tribes, intermarried, and became part of indigenous communities. Oral traditions among some Native American groups hint at such absorption. Still others argue that starvation, disease, or exposure wiped them out quietly, but the mystery deepens when we look at later hints scattered through history. Early Jamestown settlers in Virginia reported encounters with native tribes that included people with European features, suggesting survivors of Roanoke had merged with local populations. Maps and writings from the era occasionally reference abandoned European-style settlements further inland. But none of these fragments provide definitive proof. Then there are more mysterious and speculative theories. Some have claimed the colony fell victim to supernatural forces, the spirits of the land, curses, or even creatures from legend. Others point to the word Croatoan itself, noting its later appearance in bizarre contexts. For instance, the word was reportedly found written in the journal of Edgar Allan Poe before his mysterious death, and carved into the bedpost of the ill-fated actor Edwin Booth, brother of John Wilkes Booth. Was this coincidence, or did Croatoan hold some deeper, more haunting significance? Archaeologists have searched Roanoke Island and nearby areas for decades, uncovering artifacts but no conclusive answers. Pottery shards, European tools, and traces of settlements suggest contact between colonists and native peoples, but they do not tell the full story. Modern research continues, with DNA testing and archaeological digs hoping to finally solve the puzzle. Yet even today, no one can say for certain what became of Virginia Dare, her mother Eleanor, and the rest of the colony. The Lost Colony of Roanoke is more than just a historical mystery. It represents the fragility of human ambition against the forces of nature, the complexities of cultural encounters, and the haunting reminder that not all stories have endings. When John White left Roanoke in 1587, he never imagined that 3 years later he would return to find only silence and the cryptic carving of a single word. That moment, frozen in history, marks the start of centuries of speculation. To this day, historians and storytellers wrestle with one enduring question: what truly became of the 115 men, women, and children who set out to make a new life in the New World? The most widely discussed theory is assimilation. The word Croatoan, carved into the tree, was not random. The Croatoan people, who lived on Hatteras Island, had at times been friendly toward the English settlers. Some historians believe the colonists abandoned the fort and sought refuge among their indigenous neighbors, merging into their community. Later, reports from English colonists in Jamestown mentioned native tribes with members who had gray eyes or spoke English words. These descriptions hint at the possibility that the bloodline of Roanoke settlers lived on, hidden within native societies. Another theory suggests that the settlers met a violent end. Hostile relations with nearby tribes, combined with dwindling supplies, could have driven conflict. Yet the absence of bones or evidence of a massacre raises doubts. If such violence had occurred, the remains of the settlers or their belongings should have been discovered. The silent fort, neatly dismantled rather than burned or destroyed, points to a more orderly departure. Some believe the settlers attempted to sail back to England or relocate inland. Without experienced shipbuilders and navigators, such an endeavor would have been perilous. The Atlantic claimed countless lives in those years, and if the colonists had built small boats, they might have been swallowed by storms. Other records hint at abandoned European-style houses deeper in the American interior, suggesting the colonists might have tried to move away from the coast. But no definitive settlement linked to Roanoke has ever been confirmed. Starvation is another grim possibility. The settlers faced harsh conditions, limited resources, and isolation from England. Crops may have failed, and supplies would have run low. In such desperation, some may have died slowly, others leaving to seek help, their fates lost to history. Still, starvation alone does not explain the missing bodies, nor the careful carving of Croatoan. Beyond practical theories, the mystery has drawn stranger explanations. Some stories speak of supernatural forces, of curses placed upon the land by spirits angered by intrusion. In American folklore, the Lost Colony is sometimes linked to tales of witches, demons, or restless ghosts. These legends, though lacking evidence, persist because the complete absence of physical remains invites eerie speculation. Then there is the enduring riddle of the word itself. Croatoan became more than just a clue. It became a symbol of the unexplained. Its strange reappearances in history only fuel the mystery. Edgar Allan Poe reportedly uttered the word before his death. It has been found carved into objects linked to unexplained events. Some see it as coincidence, others as a curse that follows moments of disappearance. The mystery of Roanoke continued to haunt America long after the 16th century. In the 19th and 20th centuries, writers, poets, and dramatists revived the tale, weaving it into novels and plays. Virginia Dare, the first English child born in the New World, became a symbol in American culture, sometimes depicted as a tragic heroine, sometimes as a figure of hope. In modern times, the Lost Colony appears in documentaries, TV shows, films, and even horror series, each reimagining what might have happened. Archaeologists still dig for answers. In recent decades, excavations on Hatteras Island have uncovered English artifacts, jewels, weapon fragments, and pottery that suggest contact between settlers and the Croatoan tribe. But whether these items belonged to survivors of Roanoke or were simply traded remains unknown. DNA testing of modern descendants in the region continues, with researchers seeking genetic links that might confirm assimilation. Yet, as of today, no final proof has emerged. Why does this mystery endure? Perhaps because it touches on fundamental human fears: isolation, abandonment, the unknown. The colonists left everything familiar behind in search of a new beginning, only to vanish, leaving behind no explanation. Their fate embodies both the hope and the peril of exploration. They remind us of how fragile life can be when faced with the vastness of nature and the limits of human endurance. In the end, we are left with a haunting absence. No graves, no documents, no voices from the past to tell us what became of them. Only a single word carved into wood, Croatoan. Was it a signpost, a farewell, or a warning? We may never know. The Lost Colony of Roanoke stands as one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in history, a puzzle that resists resolution, and perhaps that is why it continues to captivate us. For sometimes, the unanswered questions linger longer and echo louder than the ones we solve.